And welcome back to Dollars and Dragons. Today I have with me Jason Cutrone and Kienna Shaw. If you'd like to introduce yourselves to our audience today.
Would be happy to.
Yeah.
My name is Jason Cutrone. I am a award-winning Texan game designer and co-author of Blood on My Name, which, as of this recording, has launched and is currently going through a crowdfunding campaign through itch.io. So, very excited to be here and talk about the process and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and I'm Kienna, or Kienna Shaw. I am the other co-author of Blood on My Name. I am also an award-winning TTRPG game designer, narrative designer, and writer. Jason and I have worked on a lot of projects together. We're here to talk about our latest one. Yay! I've been on the podcast here before, so you may recognize me in my voice. But it's been a little while now. It's been some time. So excited to be back here.
Kienna, I just want to point out, you still have been involved in every single published product that I've done. So, like, every product that I have made, like, you've been in it. So, I will not let that escape this room.
I just haunt you. And my presence is forever there.
Yeah, whenever I think of like something new to do, I'm just like I like wake up and I see like the ghost of Kienna just hovering over my bed. I'm just like Kienna.
The ghost of Kienna says, "Lower your scope."
I mean, that's true. And I mean, speaking of scope, so this game, right? This game is very neat. It is very like this is a bite-sized game that I believe it's one of those things where and what I love about games like this is the barrier to entry is so low that you're able to really just pick it up. I read it in 30 minutes and I'm already excited about playing it. And it is one of those games where I think that you can share with others, even though it is like a quote unquote solo journaling game ish kind of style. It is 100% like one of those games where you can share your experiences with other people very easily, and you can document them and like share them. Like, I don't know, like people share stuff on social media like all the time to do with like their creative work, or like, hey, here's what was that word game, Wordle, that people were playing? You know what I mean? Like, this is the type of thing where I can see people like recording their gameplay and just sharing with other people and having it be just a really fun experience for people to just engage with as a community. This is something also that like even like streamers and things, if they play it, they can play it with the interaction of like their chat, and it's just there's so many opportunities, I feel, for the enjoyment in this game. But let's start with getting to my first question. I just had to gush about that and how I was thinking about this game when I was reading it. But my first question, well, let's start with the basics. Like, where did this idea come from? And how did we get started with the process of creating this game?
As is with many of my collaborations with Jason, I would like to make this game. Shit, I don't want to make it by myself. Hello, Jason, my creative partner in crime. What do you think about this idea? And for me, really, the idea comes from the fact that I love the John Wick movies. They are, I think, one of my favorite film franchises of all time. I have all of the movies on disc. They exist as physical copies. I have rewatched all of them multiple times. I love this movie, and it's very funny. When I published the game, I had people be like, I remember kind of gushing about John Wick on social media, and so this makes a lot of sense. And so I've always wanted to do a John Wick game, and I've like played around with ideas for that for several years at this point. And I kind of was thinking about it, and I was like, what about a solo game of John Wick? And in that way, it would be less focused on the like doing action stuff and a little bit more on the emotional and physical turmoil that a John Wick-esque character goes through, as well as the really fascinating weird global underworld of assassins that the movies present is something that I really enjoy. And so yeah, I was like, what if we did this? And then I went to Jason. I was like, how about this? And Jason can talk about what he does on his end on more detail. But essentially, what happens for me is I'll be like, hey, so I have an idea and I have like a basic outline document of what the process could look like and probably what mechanics and stuff. And then Jason disappears for like 4 hours and comes back with like, how about a first draft of like a bunch of these prompts and like pros? And I go, I don't know how this happened, but it's here now. And then we spent, basically a year or two just going back and forth and refining the text and refining the mechanics and eventually getting to a place where we could put it to an editor and to layout design and get it out. And Jason, do you want to like talk about the hello? I dump an idea upon your lap and go, how do?
I've always felt that it was more of a sense of like, whenever a creative project is sort of presented to me, I'm very much one of those that can't let enough alone. I am sort of iterative in my process, so whenever I have an idea for, let's say, a prompt, I will get down the bare bones of it and then, move on from it, and then return and move on and return and move on and rewrite and revisit and just sort of ping pong around in essentially a like 2x2 grid until such time as I'm rocketed out of that space and can sort of take it over to Kienna and be like, hey, this was written until about 2 o'clock in the morning. How does this look? Does any of this make sense? But yeah, in terms of the inspiration for a lot of the prompting and a lot of the fiction surrounding the game itself, I draw inspiration, of course, from the John Wick franchise, but I also draw inspiration from the works of John le Carré, the author of the Karla Trilogy, which is a very seminal like piece of spy fiction. And more recently, I also drew inspiration from The Day of the Jackal and like some of the older like 70s to 80s retro spy fiction, where there is an overwhelming sense of trauma not only to the body but to the person underneath. Like, it's not that you are this James Bond-esque figure that can take any blow and just sort of shrug it off, or that knows who the evil person is and can go and provoke them directly. You are, in this, operating as an agent who is supposed to be retired, who is supposed to be disappeared, who's supposed to have had that happy ever after that didn't ever come. So, or that came and then was taken away from you. So, as that core conceit kind of rattled around in my brain, I just thought, what would be a compelling scenario to find that character within? That maybe we've seen before, and others that maybe delve a little deeper into the psychology of such a person. That asks the question of, I think a couple of the prompts I kind of mirror. I will admit I do cheat a couple of times by changing the wording ever so slightly. But two of the prompts that I'm most proud of was a routine sort of operation or thing that you do goes awry and hurts you. How does it hurt your mind versus how does it hurt your body? So one of the things that sort of sticks with me is the idea of as soon as you become comfortable with a tool, that's when an accident happens. So your body or your mind being this, well-shaped tool that's specifically designed for killing, your John Wick, your these hyper, competent assassins, that does not mean you are immune from the sort of trials and tribulations of what you're doing. So it was an interesting space to sort of play around in. And similar to our first game, it was one of those where I just thought through scenarios and situations that I think was compelling enough to query an answer to. So our first game was back in, you might have to help me with the date here, 2017? 2018.
God, I'd have. When the fuck was Omega made? Anyways, as is noted, Jason and I have been working together
For
on
several
stuff for a
years.
very long time.
Yes.
And so our process is very informal. It's very conversational. And part of that is that we are very close friends who talk like basically every day. Also, 2019 is when we published Omega.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Time dilation. Oh.
Time dilation.
Great.
But we talk. We're very good friends, and we talk every day. And so our collaborative process is super like. I joked about like here's an idea, Jason goes and writes stuff, and then we figure it out from there. But it kind of is that we often come to each other with, "Hey, this is what what I have right now. What do you think? And what do you see opportunities to expand on this? Where it needs to be edited?" We're very very not precious about our words and our work when it comes to each other because we trust each other to make the stuff we're doing better. So very frequently we'll be in Google Docs and just like working on the document at the same time at different places, and then like I'll scroll up and see what Jason's up to, and I'll go, I'm gonna fuck around with this wording a little bit before I go back to what I'm doing, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So it's this very like open space, and honestly, I think our biggest issue is just getting to the point where we're both like, all right, we're good, we're hands off, we're done, because it's very easy for the two of us to just continue just like talking to each other about the thing and being like, well, what about this? Or like, what if we change this? Or like, what if we like finagle this wording a little bit?
Yeah. The iterative process that I engage in very much kind of lends itself to gilding the lily, where it's just like, oh, this is good, but it's not as good as it could be. And constantly reassessing and believing that, oh, no, this will be a better idea, or this will be a better wording. And then something like 2 hours later, I'll look back at the document and say, actually, I liked the way that it was. I wanted it to be, purposefully obtuse, or I wanted it to be this particular wording. So go back and undo all of the hard, work that you just did. Because again, like Kienna said, we're not precious with these things. It's not like we're constantly thinking, oh, we've written gold and that nothing could possibly, ever replace. No, it's just you find the basic conceit of each prompt and work that prompt and work the idea of the game as best you can. Be it from, inspired from like, I remember there is a long-standing work in progress that I don't believe either of us have literally contributed a word to, which is the idea of rabbit punks. I think, yeah, I think we came up with like the idea of this thing which was inspired by a medieval Illumination script of two rabbits with
beating the shit out of a person.
Beating the shit out of a person, yes. And we were like, okay, yeah, that seems like a game. Wait a minute. How does that seem like a game? And then we went off and,
we made this game instead. We made
this game instead, yeah. Like, it all of the creative energies that flow from one work in progress to another just kind of keeps us in a state where we're like, oh, this particular idea appeals to us and resonates enough for us to clamp down and get into the nitty-gritty of how to make this happen. And that's what happened with this game. This has been on the books for at least 2 years, I think.
Yeah,
and the majority of the prompts have been written, the rules had been sort of established at least by sometime last year. But, scheduling and commitment and energy levels being what they are, we just had to sort of go off and do that before returning and saying to ourselves, you know what, this is a story that we want to put out into the world and help and facilitate the telling of stories that I think players will find compelling. So, yeah.
That was a very long-winded answer to what our process is, which is to say, kind of the way that we talk, which is a lot of building on each other conversationally. And at some point, we go from an idea to something that is finished. And I wish I had a more formalized process for that to tell to people, but that's not how we work.
Yeah, I think there was a post recently was it Rami Ismail? I can't remember the particular person, but saying that advice is essentially useless because you have to be in a certain set of circumstances and be a certain person doing a certain thing that then spurs on greater success. I think it was in reference to the extraordinary success of Balatro. And so this idea that there is a pathway or a checklist that you can get, off the ground and running, that isn't technically how any sort of quote unquote wild overnight success happens. And I think we've been fortunate enough, Kienna and I, to not have the expectation that this will, blow the lid off, the industry and suddenly we'll be millionaires. But we make these things because creatively they're compelling, they're interesting to us. And to me, I have the belief, or at least this sort of creative mantra of, if it's not interesting to me, why would I want to inflict it on anybody else? So yeah, that's sort of the standard operating procedure. So write or do something that is compelling. Chances are somebody else will also, find it compelling enough to throw a bit of money towards.
I wanted to go over the summary of the game because I just realized that I hadn't done that because I've just woken up. And so, Blood on My
Now that
Name.
we've talked about this game that you have no context for, what do you think?
So, Blood on My Name is a solo journaling TTRPG that follows a former assassin on a mission for revenge. Delve into the shadowy underworld filled with espionage and intrigue, connect to former professional associates, explore clandestine locales, and eliminate anyone and anything that stands between you and your target. So I want to talk about solo journaling as a medium, and one of the things that has really struck me about a lot of these indie games, and I literally just talked to Banana Chan about this, and her new game, Knockoff, which is in her series of kind of Dorian Gray-esque, like, painting style horror. Solo journaling games are a radically different experience than what we're used to, and it sounds like the process of which that you are creating this game, which is an action game, more or less, right? It's an action storytelling game. You're going the opposite route that a lot of these role-playing games started with, which was like very overwrought, like super long encyclopedic simulationist, like 900 pages for something that maybe won't get read by 90% of the people who buy the book, and they just skip to the sections they need. And you're kind of in a genre, especially for solo journaling games, where everything in every page really matters. And it's more akin to, I would say, like prose or poetry or short story, as opposed to like these big, long, sweeping, like Brandon Sanderson style novels. And is not to say that like something like Pathfinder, which has like a 600-page core book, right? Which is just filled with just a ton of like rules and minutia and everything else.
Yeah, ways to make the number ever so slightly bigger than it was previously. Yeah.
Right, and mega complex. But this game is, you can read it in less than 30 minutes like I did, and you know how to, and it doesn't even take that long because you don't actually need to read the whole thing. You just need to read like 2 or 3 of the pages and you know how to play. And then you can suffer the consequences, which is the stage in which you play. Which I love, by the way. And like there's aspects of the game that I really enjoy because of how refined the language is. I'm gonna let you talk because
Yeah.
why did you choose solo journaling for this game, and why does it fit this game specifically?
Yeah, so I love solo games, and I love the opportunities that solo games provide in a way to let people reflect upon themselves through the lens of a character in a story. People talk a lot about how like they play RPGs and they like find ways that their real who they are as real people it starts to kind of bleed into the character, or the character and the story is starting to reveal parts about themselves. And solo games are really good at being able to provide that kind of venue where they can. It is this introspective space, which you would think for a game like based on a franchise that's about kicking ass and murder, that seems kind of like incongruous with each other, right? It's like you would think that a high action does not match up with introspection and making you think about who you are and yourself and your relationship to the world. But honestly, it is that more emotional aspect that is a draw to me for John Wick and other movies and stories in that genre. The way that forcing you to think about violence and forcing you to think about the cost of violence on yourself, on the world around you, on the people that you have relationships with, was really important to me to explore. And like, I want to make John Wick games that are not solo games. I have another idea for a John Wick game that is like a rotating role, multiple people game, but with the solo experience. I also like, as a game designer, delving into that space and providing very niche but niche emotional experiences. Being able to really get into the weeds of like, I am here to provide you this very specific experience, but because of you are a player who's coming in with their own thoughts, feelings, perspectives, and past and stuff, you're going to be interfacing and getting a different experience out of it than another player. And that's the beauty of games, right? It's the interactivity. And so in a way, my interactivity is less in because there's only one player. It's less between people and less and more about people and themselves or people and the text, which I think is one of the reasons why we went for the Wretched format, which is a 52 card prompt deck. You draw cards, and there's a block tower which emulates the tension of like things about to collapse and fall apart at any moment. And so this was just really appealing, and has been something Jason and I have explored in many of the games we've made together, have been this kind of solo stuff, because we can really hone in and be kind of personal, like in a parasocial way. Like, we're not literally sitting next to this person and be like, hello, I am your GM here, but in a way that the game text is doing that. And so by being specific in places, we can also be open. And we can let people fill in the gaps. So we're very specific about how the game begins. We're very specific about how the game can end. We're very specific about different points in between. But we let, because they're questions, we invite people to bring in their own, who they are into the game itself. Do you have anything else to add to that, Jason?
Yeah, for me, I came at it from a more utilitarian standpoint, which was that solo journaling and sort of the prompt system is something I'm far more familiar with. A lot of my work is very like full of prose and this sort of language that wants to construct a scene that then feeds into the story. So one of the things that I was thinking about as you were describing, a lot of action games, quote unquote, very much are focused on the minutia of the way in which that action can be enacted within the world. There are systems upon systems that describe ways in which your character can take a particular set of actions and affect the world state around them. With this, I sort of thought, well, the protagonists of spy fictions very often do have things happen around them and to them, but they get through it more often than not. It's not like, well, going back to the Bond example, even though, especially in the more recent films, they've gone towards trying to humanize or otherwise, make Bond a more vulnerable character than he had been sort of previously. And so in that space, wanting to honor that sort of shift in the fiction, I was very interested to see, well, okay, things happen to your character. How do you react? How does this alter the way you operate? Or indeed, does it alter the way you operate? Because you can, there is one interpretation where a player can go through and, record what they have done in a very either I don't want to say militaristic, but in a very bare bones sort of way where you just describe the events and move on and go forward. And even that speaks to the mentality of the character that you're inhabiting, I just thought as we were sort of generating this, the reason why we oriented ourselves towards solo journaling, besides my selfish need to make creativity as easy as possible for me, it was to really drill down into the stories that the person can bring to the table and the stories that whoever is playing can generate and self-generate, because those to me are where interest lies. And whether they choose to share that on social media, as you had said, I think in the pre-recording section or even at the beginning of this recording, you can share this does feel like something you can sort of put out into the world and sort of have interaction with. I find as well that it's important to hold space for a genre or a style of story that allows a person to inhabit a character or role that they might not want others to see, that they might not feel comfortable with sharing, with other people. Within the game itself, you record messages to the people that you lost. And grief is something that is sort of a universal feeling, yes, but sometimes people don't want to share the depth of that feeling universally. So giving that space and that permission, quote unquote, to just go through the story, go through the game, and, at the end, potentially even eliminate all of your notes, depending on how play rolls out, I think is just a needed space within the genre of action games, because action serves story, in my opinion. And so if you just have, mindless action, you get there was a movie that came out concurrently or a little bit after Drive that Ryan Gosling did with the same director. I think it was Only God Forgives or something like that. And in contrast to Drive, which was, people fawned over critically and was a commercial success, Only God Forgives, everybody looked at it and said, this is just mindless action. What are we doing here? We just saw this, or this is no different. What is this saying? And I think that's because so often in creative spaces, action is seen as equivocal to story, which isn't necessarily true. So yeah.
I have so much to say about that. Okay, so this genre is basically what I like to call the "you pissed off the wrong old guy" genre of media, and it's this encompasses everything from Rambo to your modern John Wicks, and you even have things which media like a movie like The Expendables, which kind of pays homage to a lot of that genre, and it's really just the most I guess B movie. It's not a B movie, but B movie style. We are literally just here for the cameos and the action, and there's no actual substance to this that's worthwhile or investing into. And then you have a John Wick, which is very visceral and personal, and yet doesn't slow down or pump the brakes at all on the action, because that's where the meat of some of the enjoyment is a John Wick experience is very personal, right? When you watch the movies and when you sort of take in the experience itself, you're thinking about like what drives a guy to do this, and you just focus on that one character the whole time. So I do find that to be very interesting. And one thing in what you said about like erasing the notes at the end, and I guess I did read that part, and I was like, they literally mean erasing your notes. So like that experience that you just had with yourself was only for you. And that is such an interesting way to play a game. And it is sort of it's not, I'm not saying it's therapeutic. I'm not a doctor. but this is like, that to me seems like you're doing something for the enjoyment of simply doing it. And that is definitely something that you don't see a lot of, because often tabletop role-playing games are used for the community aspect or bringing people together. And I'm not saying your game drives people apart, but
no.
might.
We want people to be isolated. Yes, this is the official stance of both Kienna and myself.
No.
Yes, we want no one to communicate or have any sort of communication. No, of course not. But yeah, I sort of see what you mean, where most games very much feed into this sense of like, you are telling a story collaboratively, and you are interested in the communal aspects of sharing character moments and having these revelations, and be that in the context of a larger fantasy story or superheroes or whatever. But yeah, I think there is something that is, I won't go so far as to say profound, but there is something compelling about a story which you are able to tell and then sort of Mission Impossible style, this tape will self-destruct. Like, yeah. You will not have any sort of immediate recollection of the event itself. It just exists as a moment that you personally can go through. And of course, with any RPG, if you really like what you made, you can always not follow the rules. Like, there is no like, Kienna and I are not dictatorial in wanting to erase somebody's fiction or story, but very specifically in the context of this world, it's very much your character's actions and all that are buried. You are already dealing with a clandestine organization, which we are presupposing in this world is all encompassing, is very much like all the worst global conspiracist theories like are valid and probably true. And so when you are up against an organization, it's that old phrase of, when you're seeking revenge, you better dig 2 graves. Like, there is a high chance, and that was communicated beautifully through our use of the wretched system having such a high rate of failure, where it's just like, hey, you probably aren't going to see this through to the end, and if you do, there will be consequences. Like, there's no sense that you get out cleanly. So yeah,
there are ways to get out alive, but not necessarily ways to get out alive and it be a good ending, quote unquote, right?
Right.
But it is, I think one of the things that I like doing in my game design is having a very defined beginning and end. And it's the exploration of what happens in between that gives meaning and differentiates your experience of that beginning and that end. Because 2 people can kind of hit the same outcomes of like, you died, or like based on what cards you pulled and what things you were able to accomplish. You might survive, but to what end? What things will haunt you?
Yeah, so the game itself is just it reads like such a journey. It feels like, to me, like you pick up this game, you've got a couple hours or however long that it takes. How long did it take you to play test?
I want to say like an hour. Oh,
An
Yeah,
hour?
roughly,
Okay.
like roughly hour, 90 minutes, depending on like how exhaustive the messages
Mm-hmm.
to the ones you loved are, and also just sort of personal taste, where it's just like I want to really think about this instead of going first
Mm-hmm.
impulse or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like something that, as a personal journey, like you can, the replayability seems genuinely like incredible, just by the format of the game and what Chris put together for the Wretched, the prompts themselves and everything that the options and like I just feel like. Also, is there a I just have to ask just off the top of my head, but um, what is the probability of failure? It seems like 75%.
I,
It seems
I I
like
don't think we've ever figured out the math on that, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah. It's one of those where, as we were looking at the Wretched, I very specifically wanted to make sure that the the ending of the game was a little bit that there would be a point of difference between the Wretched, which is very much like isolated, very self-contained, and it can just sort of end automatically with no sort of acknowledgement as to a resolution. It sort of like creates an artifact of a particular point in time that could just end up screwing you. With this, I think we both wanted to sort of expand the oeuvre of the system itself so that it that it encompassed a lot of variation and afforded the player, if not a satisfactory conclusion, at least some sort of resolution, like that says that, hey, this is what your character goes through as a result, as a direct result of what you have done and how far you've gotten. That could be, a wonderful thing for you. That could be a not so wonderful thing for you, dependent on what you do and how you go about the actual, the actual playing of the game. So
yeah,
fun
and
times.
and failure and success in this is so RNG based. It's like, are you lucky enough to pull 4 kings before the tower falls? Are you lucky enough to get all the tokens off of your card? Which is to say, have you rolled enough sixes before the tower falls and or before you get all 4 kings? It's so variable. So
I mean,
yeah,
there's a
it's hard to do that
non-zero.
math.
Oh yeah, yeah. And there's a non-zero chance that somebody will eventually, like within the first couple turns of play, just draw all 4 kings, and then just wonder, wait a minute, what the hell? Why is this game only 20 minutes long? I don't understand. But even in that, there will be opportunities to have players, as you say, go through this narrative structure that they may become familiar with, but that will shift in, the order that they draw whatever prompts or come up, in the way that they define their relationships, not only with the ones that they lost, but the one who wronged them. And so, just there are myriad ways to justify or otherwise sort of compel play. And that's what I think is so wonderful about The Wretched, and what's so wonderful having, written this with Kienna.
I'm looking at like the possibilities of replayability from the perspective of a creator that or just a player, where you create a character and part of the joy of this game is the setup, is creating the character. And that's one of the things that a lot of people really enjoy about RPGs in general. But it's such a different frame for this game because a lot of those roguelike games or games where you have a high chance of dying, the inclination is to invest less into your character. And yet this game is the opposite of that, in which you are the entire character creation process is creating that character with love and to surround them with details about who they are and why this point of friction, this fight matters to them. What I think is most interesting about the character creation process is I feel like a lot of the time you could just import your characters that you love, right? You might not like the results, right? But you could do that. But at the same time, the process of creating a character, I think, is in your setup, which is it all fits on one page, apparently. Is that true? Am I lying? It's all on one page, right? I believe
I believe so.
Basically.
Yeah.
2 at the max, and this is 2 pages out of what? How many are in the document itself? Like only less.
20s.
I think less than 20. Yeah.
20.
So-
well, the entire game's like 26 pages or something like that.
Less than 30, excuse me. But yes, so I think the main motivating factor is that when you know, in the first John Wick film, you think that the killing of a dog and the stealing of a car is something of no consequence, really, at first, at least. And then the movie basically helps to make John a terrifying protagonist. Like, within the span of a few scenes, you basically realize that in deciding this course of action, the people that you've been following, the antagonists or what have you, the people that are found against John Wick, have basically signed their own death warrant. So, it was of no consequence at the time, you believe, but there was enough effort undertaken by the creatives behind that franchise to show that there is an emotional resonance that motivates this character that makes it to where they cannot let this slide. In creating your own sort of version of John Wick or however you want to define them, we wanted to make sure that at the start of it, we made it clear this is a story of personal vengeance. And the only way to make that happen is to basically add a component of the character that is subsequently lost. That they prized and valued and loved sincerely, and then was taken away from them. It helped to convey that emotional resonance. And what also helps is that you define your antagonist. It could just be a person that you knew a very long time ago, worked with sparingly, who just randomly showed up. Or it could have been something that is deeper, that is left for you to define. Having all that legwork at the front, taking up about 10% of the book, helps to inform your response as you go through 52 prompts, which basically ask, why do you continue on this path? Why do you not just walk away? And I think at one point in time, I had come up with an ending where it was you consciously push the tower over and just, consciously depart from play. Like your player character just gives up. And I quickly axed that because the interest in these stories it springs from when a character believes themselves to be fully justified. And, when they do things that are according to their personal schema. And that's not as compelling if you suddenly can say, oh, John Wick, you can just stop. Hey, just chill out. And it's like, no, this is not something you can have a conversation about. This is not something you can just walk away from. You chose this path, and in doing so, as the whole section is titled, you suffer the consequences.
Yeah, and we talk about, this is a game where you inherently have to let go of your character. This is not, you cannot infinitely play. And I think there's a beauty to that, right? And we're pretty clear about that up front, I think. This is not, a game where you can have a campaign. It's like, no, it's part of the definition of the experience is that it's over. I'm sure people can port in their games. I can't tell them what to do. I'm not their mom. I'm the game designer who made the game. And so I can't stop them from doing that. But I think we put in a lot of scaffolding to make the experience feel good when you have to let go of that character. Because all ties back into the themes and the tensions of the story, which is, as Jason pointed out, to what price will you pay to enact vengeance? And with the character creation, it is pretty actually bare bones, right? But it is very specific pointed question. And by doing this, it can be very quick. You can just ask the questions, bam, 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 let's go. The pointedness of the questions and the themes it's trying to explore are already present right at the get-go. So you're already thinking. We're setting up the player to already be thinking in the space that we want them to be. So by emphasizing that it's about who the character was when they were an assassin, who the character became when they retired, what they lost, which is their driving force, and then defining who their antagonist is. We're giving the entirety of what you need to know, which is who were they, who are they now, what relationships define them. And with that key information in hand, they can go through the game thinking about those things. And detail will evolve over the course of play. We have many prompts that ask the player to think about their character in the past. Why did they know this person that they've come across now? What terrible things have they done in the past? It's a game of violent nostalgia, essentially, about reflecting on a past that is soaked through with blood and violence, and then being asked to return to that as a changed person, being asked to return to that after having experienced peace and love. And confronting the cost of what has been done in the past and the cost of what is being done now. So the hope is that because it's kind of this one-page character creation, people feel comfortable coming back in and playing again if they want to, and that they feel okay with letting go of their character at the end because the journey itself will have been satisfying and will have come to a conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking at stuff for the consequences, and there's 3 outcomes if your tower's still up, and then there's the outcome if your tower falls. And in reading through it, and I won't spoil too much for those that are going to get the game, but the amount of variation that I see that can happen between even the same outcome for each character, it's something that I imagine like and when I was talking about when I say replayability, I'm talking about the fact that there are 3 built-in outcomes that are considered like you've done the thing, and then of course tower's fallen, like your guy dies, and explaining that process or going through that process in a solo journaling game is very interesting because. Especially with the fact that with the RNG, the randomness of drawing from the deck, it's like I imagine that 4 times playing this game is a very, very, like, that's not enough minimum time in my opinion. Like, if you like the game, like, and you only play it 4 times, you didn't really like the game. Like, I feel like this game can probably be, and we'll see, like, I'm looking forward to playing it, but I feel like I could play this game probably like 10 to 15 times at least, just based on the amount of different things. And I just imagine like and again, like going back to my comment on those who want to share their experiences, being able to record and like actually share this with other people, and the people who are streamers or whatever that want to put together like they get someone to create some art of their character and the experience itself. Like you can create like this journaling little podcast episode of your agent of the do you call them anything in particular? Is it the agent of Babel, agent assassin of
No,
Babel?
I don't believe that we have like an established term for who they are. We actually request the player sort of create whatever they were known as. So, be that a code name, be that just their actual name, or something like that. Like, but the agent or the assassin, your character, whoever they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, for instance, like you could be like, you could go like in the genre variation that you can have just as a laugh for yourself. It's just so wild. Like you could be Piano Wire Pete. You know what I mean? Like you could do something just very silly, or you could do something very serious.
Yeah,
with your characters.
I would love to see the Frank Drebin Police Squad version of this game. I think that'd be very interesting. But again, that point of difference from the Wretched, we wanted to make sure that there was that sense of like, there's not always the one outcome. There's variability and texture. And again, there are situations where you can just, if you so desire, ignore the tower completely and just sort of play the game through as you want. But I think that there is something to be said about, racing against the clock, having this sense of tension and just sort of prolonging it as much as you can before finally reaching like the denouement, the ending where it's like, okay, now let's wrap everything up. So yeah, I think even within the 3 endings that we had, there was another point of difference, which if you fulfill a certain condition within the game, that for a total of like 7 endings, there are, different things that could happen. Even outside of that, though, I think that, that wasn't something that I was sort of consciously focusing on while we were playing the game. I just thought, I genuinely had the thought of, oh, wait a minute, they might not die. What happens then? and just trying to go back and figure out, okay, well, wait a minute, what does it mean when they get an injury? Hang on. And just, again, that iterative process sort of coming back to bite me, as it were.
So let's talk about the campaign itself. Blood of My Name. It's on itch right now. You have some. Your funding goal is for the 3,000, and along the way you have some various things that you're providing because of it. Is there going to be a physical copy? You think? Do you think you're?
That's the hope. The hope really is so essentially the structure of our itch funding, which for people who don't know, crowdfunding on itch.io, which is a little funky, but essentially we have a sale bundle going on until the end of our crowdfunding campaign, which is May 15th. And so our initial goal is like, we have our game complete, right? We have it done and ready, but we want to do more with it. And so we want to be able to make a print run and do a print edition published by Heart Held Games, which is run by Dylan Grinder, who did our editing and the graphic design and artwork that is all in there. And so we have a bunch of these like nice to have goals, essentially, right? It's like, hey, if we earn this amount of money from the game, we'll be able to do more digital version. And we build up to, a print edition, and then we build up we have more goals set in the background in case we manage to blast through everything we have. But it's really just at this point, we just want to give people reason to buy into it, give us something to potentially do more with the game, which is a little different than most people when they do crowdfunding, right? Most crowdfunding campaigns tend to be this kind of most crowdfunding campaigns tend to be on a like helping to fund the development of the game itself or the product or whatever's going on. And so this is a lot less, oh God, this project will die if we don't hit funding, which was a very intentional choice on our end. Because I've been through that, and it's rough. It's rough to have that as like this project lives or dies based on whether people like it enough to buy into it. And so we took the version of like, hey, game's ready. You can buy it. You can play it. It's ready to go. But if you really like it and you're invested into it, we'll be able to do more cool stuff for you. And we actually have backer rewards, which is something that Itch.io did not inherently let you do. We have had to do some funky stuff with that, which is to say we have made a private project for people who buy the bundle. So it's a project that you cannot, the backer rewards you cannot buy separately. You can only get it within the bundle. And then once you buy the bundle, which is basically just the game at 1% off, you then get access to this other project page where we will be putting cool back rewards like poster files. Like we're going to be taking some of the graphics and turning them into cool posters that you can print out yourself. And if we do hit that print edition goal, which is at 2.5K, people who bought the game will be able to just get at print cost the printed version, so they don't have to buy it again. They would just have to pay the amount that it costs to print the small book. So we hope that will help people be interested in funding this.
And even beyond the 2,500, the 3,000, there are goals that we have set beyond that we will be more than happy to unveil as we hit those markers and as we sort of go through. But again, that main just being, this is not us asking for money in advance or like a down payment. Like the game exists and you will be given a copy as soon as you buy it. You know, you just part with your 20 and we'll give you the game, no strings attached. In addition to that, there are, extra perks that as more people buy and as more people are sort of drawn to this game, more eyes we get on it, the higher likelihood that you will be able to see what those sort of advanced goals are and benefit from that early investment of like, oh, hey, I got this. And in addition to that, I have all this now. So, that felt to me more ethically responsible, at least in terms of the way that we could have done it, because the game was already made, but there were further things that we had both wanted to do. And I will protest strongly against Kienna's usage of the word "we" in terms of figuring out the tech stuff. They have been the one that had done this like solely, and they have been doing a magnificent job in conjunction with Dylan. And I have just sort of reaped the benefit of their genius. So,
no, yeah. Dylan helped a lot, which is to say, I would be like, I want to do this, I want to make this work, and then late into the night, because Dylan and I are married, we live in the same apartment, and so there was a lot of just like, me being like, how do I make this work? And then we would be Googling late into the night, be like, how the fuck do we get people backer goals, and like how do we make this all work, what even are their goals? So it's a little funky. It does mean that I'm gonna have to do some manual stuff at the end, because I'm sure people are just gonna buy the game by itself, and therefore I'm gonna have to get them access to their backer rewards manually, but it's fine. It works out easier for us this way in the long run, and without us panicking about funding, which is better for our mental health. TBH.
Yeah, crowdfunding campaigns, like, so I've run two, right? And excuse me. The biggest thing is dealing with the marketing, and then like having that it's marketing is a full-time job, right? And having that goal kind of looming over you the entire time is just absolutely killer. And I said intentionally, I'm not doing the marketing for a crowdfunding campaign again. And then I ended up doing it for GM Rom because of some things that happened, right? Our marketer fell through, had to do it. And I cannot tell you like how committed I am to saying that again, that I'm never doing marketing for a game, for a crowdfunding campaign again, for that reason. So I do like that aspect of itch. I just wish that they provided, I guess, more visibility, or I don't know, like they would probably have to take more from you, I guess, because currently they don't take anything, right?
They don't. You don't have to let them take anything, which is nice. And in a way, it's also nice because it's direct to storefront. I'm not have it. It lives on it essentially lives on the storefront forever. I'm not having to figure out a different storefront situation. And so we're reaping those benefits as well because we get to be on an ecosystem with millions of other games that are out there. And in a sense, it's terrifying because it can get lost in the void. But in the other way, it just means we are contributing to an indie focused place that is able to support the types of stuff we want to do, which is as is done by Blood on My Name, weird niche emotional experiences. That's essentially a fan game, right? That's not something that sells as well on like drive-through RPG at this point. So it's pros and cons, and we just decided this was the best way for us to get about. And hopefully, we build up enough interest that we do have the momentum to fund everything. But if not, it's cool, and hopefully people will continue to find the game even past the crowdfunding campaign and continue to be like, oh hell yeah, I want to play this. And that's still direct to creator, right? It's directly to me and to Jason, money wise. So that is a pro for us as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm most interested in at this point, and I hope that someone is able to do it. I don't think I'll be able to do it with my schedule, but I really want to watch like someone put together a podcast playing this game. I really want to hear that. And
I certainly think that there's somebody who will probably do that. I mean, I'm now coming to mind, and I wish I remembered the name of the individual, but wasn't there, Kienna, you can help me on this, was there not a French-speaking YouTuber or something along those lines that had posted a playthrough of one of our games? Was it As My Body Crumbles or something like that?
Yes, we've had playthroughs of our games before. People have played them and recorded them and put them up on YouTube usually. It's been those have been super fun to watch. And as always, it's always such a joy seeing other people enjoy a game that you've made. It is also very validating to be like, yay, people like this thing and they like it enough that they're willing to not only play it, but to share it with the world. So yeah, there have been previous playthroughs of our previous games, and hopefully this will be another one, especially since we are hearkening towards a touchstone that a lot of other people do enjoy and have a good feeling for. So, yep. I am definitely interested in seeing what people do with it and whether they, keep all the play elements in, or if they just strip it down to the documentation part of it, the journaling part of it, in a sense, because it's not just writing. We also encourage people to document their games through like video or voice recording. So I am really, really excited for what that might be.
Absolutely. Was there anything else that you want to talk about Blood on My Name?
Oh, is there anything else? I think of anything really. I mean, again, I just hope people enjoy it and people come into it with fun and with this idea of like being able to do a bloody tale of revenge, but in a very melancholic way. In a very you are gonna get beat to shit in this game. But hopefully you have fun doing it, because we had a lot of fun making it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if I think my son's too young to play this game, but
This is like I would definitely put this at like a mature rating, probably.
Right, yeah.
Probably.
We have a very long list of content warnings.
Yeah, I mean, we have a reference. I personally put in a reference to the Protestant Reformation and Martin Luther. So, like, I don't know how many people, even in the mature audience, would sort of appreciate that. So,
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, you two. You can support the campaign and own the game immediately by supporting the itch.io campaign. The link is in the podcast description. You can go get it there. Go get it there now. It's just $20, and you can have this wonderful game for yourself.